Right, the next one is extreme environments. Now, an extreme environment is locations with difficult environments where tourism has only recently occurred due to people wanting to visit somewhere with difficult physical challenges. So Antarctica is definitely a difficult challenge because it is very cold. Even the summer temperatures are minus 10 degrees. To get there, the Southern Atlantic Ocean is you have very, very big waves and a lot of storms, so it's quite difficult to actually visit. You can only visit during between November and March because that's their summer. The rest of the time you wouldn't want to go because it's got 105 days of darkness and temperatures can be on average minus 40 degrees the rest of the time. So you've got a small window to actually visit. Now, tourism happened in Antarctica in the 1950s. You had small-scale tourism starting. 2009, 45,000 visitors, so it's increased by lots and lots and lots as people have seen that they want to go and visit penguins. And you've got the ice, and the ice has got different colours. You can get blue ice, and there's plenty of things. There's even 2 volcanoes that you can actually go and see. Right, so what can you see there? You can see killer whales, you can see seals, leopard seals, emperor penguins, the Gen 2 penguins. You've got lots of different fish there. So it is really, it's a holiday of a lifetime is what people would actually categorise it as. But it's very, very expensive. A trip to Antarctica, if you're travelling in quite a nice ship, it's $25,000. Okay, so this actually is quite good because it limits the amount of people that go to Antarctica. If the price was to come down, then it would have a bigger problem, wouldn't it? They usually fly into New Zealand and then sail out to Antarctica from Christchurch. It's a 7 to 14 day trip. I've said before that it is very cold there, and this makes it a very, very fragile environment because it's got a tiny ecosystem. Your ecosystem is so small that the plankton, which is the little plants, that's what the krill eats. The krill that get eaten by the fish then get eaten by the penguins and the seals, and then the killer whales that eat everything. They kill the penguins and the seals. But if you affect one thing in that food chain, that means that you're going to affect the whole lot. So if you have an oil spill and this kills a lot of the krill, then that would kill the fish, and then there would be less food for the penguins and everything, and so their numbers would diminish. And the problem that you've got there is that if you do have an oil spill, or you put lots of waste in the ocean there, and it causes a lot of sickness in the animals because there's no bacteria in the ocean to break it down. It's too cold for bacteria, so you've got to wait until the ocean currents sweep these things away. So it is very, very fragile ecosystem. Right, let's have a look at the good things about tourism there. They get very good media coverage, okay? And people that go there really want to protect and conserve Antarctica. So they can give money to Greenpeace, they can go on their social media saying that, no drilling in Antarctica for oil, that it needs to be protected. There's also a very good sustainable tourist little project that's going on there, and it's at Port Lockroy. Now this used to be a British naval base in World War II, then it became a scientific base. In 1995 the Antarctic Treaty made it a historic site, which makes it a honeypot site for tourists. Now what happens is that it's the scientists that live there, they show the tourists around, and they have very, very strict numbers of who can land and who gets shown around. So your tourist tours and environmental walks are all about how to conserve Antarctica, and so nobody is treading on lichen, because the lichen, if you tread on it, it's a little plant, it takes 50 years for it to grow back, so they're all very, very careful. It also has a little post office there, so you can send a letter home with an Antarctica stamp on it, and it's got like souvenirs that you can buy. Now the profits fund the scientists working there, and the scientists are giving evidence for global warming, for the how thick the ice is. They are making sure that they're monitoring the penguins there, because they've got the Gen 2 penguins, which is GENTOO, Gen 2 penguins. So this evidence has helped given, information about global warming, helped stop overfishing. It led to the 1986 whaling ban, because they were saying there weren't as many whales in the area. So the scientists there are doing a great job, and this is actually funded by the tourism that's there. It's only a small little project. It isn't like that on the whole of Antarctica, but it just shows how sustainable tourism can work there. 100 tour operators have also signed up for the rules of the IAATO, which limit the damage caused by tourists. For example, you can only have 500 people in a ship that are allowed to come there, and there's only 100 people allowed to land at one time. Now, this is part of the 2013, the Polar Code, and that was limiting the number and the size of the ships visiting. So if you can put in about the Polar Code, then that will get you more marks. Also, you're not allowed to use heavy fuel oil, which is the most polluting in the event of an accident, because they did have an accident. Okay, there was an accident with one ship called the Explorer in 2007, and this hit some submerged ice off Antarctica and sank. Now, all of the passengers, 154 of them, were rescued, but the oil from the ship leaked into the sea, causing pollution. And as I've said before, there's no bacteria because it's so cold, that this oil affected that area for many years until the ocean currents actually removed it. So it's not good. You just imagine that if you had huge cruise ships coming in with massive amounts of oil, if they were to crash, then this could devastate the area. Also with Antarctica, you have got the 1957 Antarctic Treaty, which has actually talks about, the protection, so countries have signed up to protect it. So hopefully tourism will be controlled, but if they do allow the bigger ships in, then that will mean that tourism will actually wreck Antarctica. But at least with the 2013 Polar Code, hopefully it should stop it from doing it. And also the price, the fact that it's $25,000 to actually go and visit Antarctica means that numbers will remain low, hopefully. So, is extreme tourism in Antarctica sustainable? Well, one, if they limit the numbers. Because we've already seen that the numbers have increased by 6 times over a short amount of time. That was in 17 years. But if they put a cap on the numbers, like for example with the 2013 Polar Code, only allowing ships in with 500 people and only allowing 100 people to land at a time, then this will limit the damage. Secondly, if they follow the Port Lockroy model, tourists being guided by scientists, and they're educated about the ecosystem and educated about what they can and can't do, then hopefully that will make it sustainable. If then this money from tourism does get funneled into scientific bases, then that will help, because that gives us evidence for global warming, the ice melting, and that helps with the whole Kyoto protocol, doesn't it? We're getting countries to cut their CO2 emissions. Positive media coverage that comes from tourists about saving the whales and publishing articles about how wonderful Antarctica is and how it should be preserved and kept perfect. Now, future problems are the Antarctic Treaty runs out in 50 years' time. So at that point, oil drilling could start, and that would actually wreck Antarctica as a tourism place anyway. So hopefully the tourists that have been there will campaign to stop that from happening. But we'll see. What bad things can tourists do? Well, it's if you get too close to the animals, then they abandon their young. Especially, you've got something called the snow petrel, which is a bird which is like the worst parent in the world. You go near them, they're like, ah, and leave their nests. Also, if you touch a penguin or touch a seal, that makes them very, very upset, and they can actually abandon their young at that point. So tourists, they've got to be careful in what they do and how they control themselves when they're in Antarctica.